nothing true.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear Leak Project, how the heck are you? I'm going to share with you the breaking headlines today, and we're going to have Colin Plume talk about some of the economics and what we're seeing now with silver and the mandate in California with new solar panels, as well as mortgage rates are going insane right now, and gas prices are getting pretty crazy. So a lot going on, breaking headlines, you know, the fun stuff. Mr. Plume, it's an honor to have you on the show with us. Colin, how the heck are you?
Rex, fantastic. Glad to be here. A lot to talk about. A lot has been happening with Trump, with North Korea. It looked like the meeting was off, and now it looks like it might be back on. So it's been interesting. And the markets, commodities markets, people flee investments they don't understand. They go into tangible investments when there's any kind of disturbance. Gold, right after the announcement that the meeting was off, gold jumped up 1.5%. Silver's up almost 2%. So it's typical. You see those things happen. Any kind of looming war, unrest in the Middle East, things like that. So it's definitely the markets have been reacting to these potential peace talks.
Absolutely. And Colin, one thing I also wanted to talk about is the global events that we're seeing with these giant fissures and these cracks that are opening up around the world, literally. We're talking Kenya, Mexico, New Zealand, obviously Hawaii because of the volcanic activity out there. Last year, a 2-mile long fissure, a 2-mile wide crack opened up in the Arizona desert. And do you know what that makes me think of? That makes me think of the film 2012. And you know what? Do you remember good old Charlie Frost, broadcasting live as the Yellowstone caldera is about to erupt? This marks the last day of the United States of America, and by tomorrow, all of mankind. And we will be visible from the Milky Way as a tiny little puff of smoke. I'm watching the earth crumble before my eyes. The giant ash cloud created by the supervolcano will envelop Las Vegas and then St. Louis and then Chicago. And then at long last, Washington, D.C. will have its lights go out. I wish you could see what I'm seeing, people. I wish you could be here with me. Oh, baby, bring it on. Always remember, folks, you heard it here first from Charlie. Oh, man. I mean, that's like crazy. That's what I'm like, I hope it doesn't get that serious. But if Yellowstone goes, you might want to get a bunker. You might want to get a lot of silver, bunker, food, and water filtration systems, and just tuck yourself away. But what do you think about that? I mean, I know you're not an expert in geology, either am I, but certainly you're very intelligent and you keep up with the world stage. So how do you feel about that?
The thing is that I've seen all these things happen. I watch the news reports, and obviously you can't keep your eyes off the video when you see these, the earth just open up. Luckily, most of the areas there really hasn't been any people. I think if these things happen in any kind of metropolitan area, everybody would be talking about it. And until that happens, nobody does. But it reminds me of, I remember the earthquake in Los Angeles in 1994. And, the devastation that we saw, all across. I mean, people forget about it, and it's not something that people bring up all the time. But, when you see a metropolitan area have any kind of shake or opening, and you see things kind of falling apart, it really puts your life in kind of perspective, and also how kind of small and minute we are. One of the famous quotes, Jerry Seinfeld, who, I love his show, and, I love his comedy. He always talks about whenever he would have a hard time thinking of a joke, or he would think his life is kind of hard, he had this picture of kind of the universe, and he would just kind of look up and say, like, I'm irrelevant. I'm this small little, cog in the wheel. And so I think when you see the earth, pulling apart, you realize, your time is short, you got to enjoy it. And also that we're just a part of this grand scheme, and we really can't control anything that's kind of happening out there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot going on, not only with nature. I've thought recently about the possibility of there being, this magnetic disturbance with Planet 9 that Michael Brown and Badage and others have said, hey, there's this ginormous planet that's so far out we can't see it, but we're feeling the effects, and it's causing other planets in the Kuiper Belt to get in a specific orbit and follow it. And then recently they came out with something. I mean, there could be a Mars-sized planet by Neptune, but I'm thinking if it's just a Mars-sized planet by Neptune, how? And they're saying that might be causing these other Kuiper Belt objects to get in a specific orbit and link up with it. And I'm thinking, okay, if it's just a planet, how would something of that mass cause this much damage to this planet? Now, if it was something enormous, or if it was like a binary star possibly that had just a ton of mass, or a dark star or something, then I could see the implications more so. But you know, with what we're seeing firsthand with the volcanic activity, with the talks of war, with what's going on in North Korea, oftentimes, as crazy as this sounds, the more research you do, you can prove this with science. The planets affect what we do here on Earth, and not millionaires but billionaires use astronomy and astrology in conjunction for what they do oftentimes in business and marketing and such. So I think that there's a lot of impact, and we're seeing a lot of it right here. And then I also find it fascinating, and I think it's exciting that this blockchain technology, the Bitcoins, the Litecoins, the Ethereum, what they're doing to revolutionize the world. And then the gold and silver are also, I think, something that's always going to be here. I think that no matter, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, you can go back to the ancient Sumerian tablets that talk about mining for gold. They found gold mines that are 300,000 years old in Africa. It's been here a long time. And now they're putting silver in everything. So, and then California just passed that new bill where they're going to be using solar panels. They're going to have to put solar panels on new homes. And I looked up how much silver is required in each panel, and it's about 3/4 of an ounce. So do you think that they could actually run out of silver? I mean, where are they getting it all? This is wild.
I think what's going to happen is that you're finding China has already bought most of the silver mines. So I think it's becoming more difficult to mine. And I think that certain countries are going to start hoarding it to sort of control the market, so to speak. So, you look at this law in California that every home is going to have to have solar panels from 2020 forward. And, as you mentioned, you're looking at about an ounce of silver in that. There's 130,000 new homes that will be built in California in 2020. There's 20 to 30,000 apartment buildings. So that's just one state. Then you start, looking at the rest of the country. You look at the rest of the world. The middle class in China already has solar panels on their homes. So I do think the demand for silver is going to continue to rise. I think they're going to be continuing to look for it in different places. And it really comes down to cost. The report that I read that came from gold and silver miners is that right now to pull gold out of the ground, it costs $1,500 an ounce. We're sitting at about $1,300 is the current spot price. And then silver, they say, is anywhere from $16 to $20 an ounce to pull it out of the ground. So we're basically at or below mining cost, depending on which report you read, for both of the metals. And, it's almost like if you could buy your house for the cost to build that house, you're buying it at just the material costs. I think anybody in the country would do that and take that opportunity. And that's basically the opportunity we have right now with precious metals. And to further go, the way I look at it when I talk to people about gold and silver and cryptocurrencies is I talk about old money and new money. Gold and silver have been around. People traded with gold and silver, gold especially for 5,000 years. It's in the Bible. It was the perfect trading instrument because an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. Whereas if you traded with cattle or if you traded with, the US dollar, and while that transaction is happening, some of the cattle gets sick or that dollar loses value. Now you're in an instrument that's going down in value, whereas gold typically will go up and continue to go up over time. So that's why it's always been a good bartering instrument. Silver is easier to find than gold. Out there's more of it, but I also think that this demand is going to pull so much out of the market that we're going to see the price really start to take off. And I do believe that it will eventually, in the next probably 3 to 5 years, I think it will exceed where it went to in 2011. It hit, $49 an ounce. I think it's going to go way past that, just based on the industrial use. Then you have, investors buying it, and then just kind of worldwide use. There's uses that are coming across every day. So I think we're going to see the price really start to surge here soon.
You know what I'd like to see, Colin, is I would like to see the MFers, the money funders, I would like to see them put silver particulates in the stratospheric aerosol injections and the solar radiation management instead of aluminum. So then we could go back to the silver age instead of being in the aluminum age.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
being
true.
sarcastic, but at the same time, I'm being serious. I'd much rather get bathed in silver than aluminum. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going back here for a minute, and I want to bring up to the audience. Thanks everybody for being here. We've already got a huge crowd, and for those of you that are just getting here, I just want to share with you some of the size of some of these cracks and these fissures that are opening up. One in southeast Mexico City, 400 meters in width. Kenya, this one opens up in Kenya's Rift Valley, and this is insane, 50 to 65 feet deep. This thing is, the opening occurred along the East African Rift, a 3,700-mile crack in the earth that formed millions of years ago, yada, yada, yada. The two tectonic plates, where'd it go here? I'm talking about this old okay, it's opened up even more now to where it's taken up roads and parts of villages. And then also New Zealand, a big one just opened up in New Zealand, ladies and gentlemen. Nature carves a giant fissure in a farm near Rotorua after a weekend of heavy rain. Oh yeah, just the heavy rain, ladies and gentlemen. Splitsville, live science. 2-mile long crack opens up in Arizona desert. Oh yeah. And also we have the opportunities with the Middle East right now. It's like a tinderbox out there. I've got somebody that I've been keeping contact with that is in the Middle East and in Israel. And, you know, he kind of gives me an inside story of what's going on out there. It's crazy out there right now, folks. And then now we're looking at mortgage rates. They've been rising at a pace not seen in almost 50 years. Yeah. The Douche Bank is in a lot of trouble right now. A lot of people are speculating if Bitcoin is going to be the new standard, the gold standard in the digital age for currencies. Iran is getting rid of trading with the petrodollar. Russia's talking about it. If Russia and China and some of these big institutions decide to drop the debt that they own, drop the treasury bonds, and then wartime happens, combined with these natural disasters. I mean, this is just like a utopia of exciting times here. So I'm all for these cryptos. I think it's great that you can have a bank in the palm of your hand. And I think it's awesome that you can also hedge against inflation with gold and silver. And that's another thing that I'm thinking about. If gold right now is less than, it's about, what is gold going for right now? About $20 an ounce?
Silver's in the $16 range.
Or silver, I mean?
Yeah, silver's in the $16 range. Gold is in, it's about $1,300 an ounce right now.
I mean,
they're both very low right now.
That's insane. I mean, let's put that into perspective. You could they've got these coins out there, these digital coins that who knows where they're even going to go. I think the top three are huge. I think Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin have kind of solidified a spot. But some of these coins out there that people have never even heard of are going for $25 a coin. And you can pick up like real silver. Like this is real silver. This is a 5-ounce piece of silver. Somebody said the other day, they made a joke. They said, "Wow, Rex, I didn't know you were so small. Seeing this was like a quarter." This is wow. So think of how much money you're saving on food. Yeah, I'm a little guy. But that was a good joke. That was funny. I like that. This is 5 ounces of silver. 5 ounces of silver does not fit in a quarter. But I think silver is great. I mean, geez, 5 ounces of silver. Okay, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, you can make some solar panels, and solar panels are mandated now. So, hello.
That 5-ounce coin is very popular. That's the America the Beautiful series. It's a limited release coin. They only make, so they pick certain national parks. They do a 20 or 30,000 run of those coins, and that's it. So comparatively to other bullion coins that are out there, like the American Eagle, they make about 37 million a year. This, they make 20 to 30,000. So that's a great coin. A lot of people have been acquiring those from us. We actually have that coin right now at about a 25% discount from the US Mint price. So if somebody's looking to acquire that, that's a great coin. We can definitely give us a call. We can help them out. One thing I don't want to gloss over is what's happening in the banking industry. Yesterday, Trump revoked some of the Dodd-Frank rules. I don't know if you saw that. Basically, that's some of the regulations for banks and how they do business, how they can loan money. And on the surface, I love rolling back regulation, except when it comes for the banks. I really do think the banks need to have regulation, because that's the one area that you and I always seem to be bailing out. And that really causes a lot of problems. And that makes me frustrated. So they pulled back Dodd-Frank and just kind of opened this up a little bit. They pulled back some, Trump signed, they're pulling back some of the regulation. They're going to open up, make, regional banks are going to be able to lend more money. It's going to free it up for them. But the problem is that they're opening it up right now with interest rates going up. The economy is going to have a pullback. So what does it feel like? It feels exactly like what happened in 2008. They opened up regulation, and really the cause of the 2008 bubble was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton opened up the lending market so that anybody can get a loan. They didn't make any restrictions on who could get a loan, and people were buying homes that couldn't afford them. They had no income. We're doing it again now. So interest rates are going up. They're going to continue to rise. Now we're opening up the lending market. Home prices are the highest they've ever been. Income hasn't gone up enough. So we're just going to make it easy to get mortgages again in this unbelievable bubble. What do people think is going to happen? We're going to see a massive correction, probably worse than we saw in 2008. So I'm very concerned right now with interest rates going up, regulation being pulled back in the banks. And I believe, businesses we should pull back regulation. It's hard to own a business, but when it comes to the banks, we really need to be cautious. And really Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies came about as a reaction of 2008. Bitcoin came out in 2009, and most people believe it came about because whoever created that was sick of the banks. They were sick of the bailouts. They wanted a currency that was separate. They wanted a currency that was independent, that people could trade peer to peer, and they didn't want to have a currency where people had to bail out. We bailed the banks out after 2008. You and I, the taxpayer, bailed them out. And so I hate to get all steamed up about this, but I really am very concerned about what's happening with our banking, and we have to watch the way that they're lending money. And those things, when the markets rise like this, we have to keep control. We can't just freely lend money out there, because what ends up happening is the banks go bankrupt. We have to come in and bail out the banks, and then our taxes go up, our obligations go up, and we're already $22 trillion in debt. So we really can't afford to have another banking crisis, Rex.
Well, and as far as the banks go, what a joke. First of all, most banks now, you have to pay to have them hold your money.
Yeah,
and then a lot of banks, their customer service stinks. They treat you like scumbags. And if you try and make a transaction sometimes that's a large amount or something like that, I've heard of people having horror stories getting $100 out of banks. And you know what? You got the bank in your hand. Guess what? You don't have to pay those scumbags to hold your money. It's unbelievable. If you really think about it, folks, talk about mind control. Talk about a conspiracy. The biggest conspiracy in the world is the banks.
Yeah, absolutely. And then people,
it's incredible.
Yeah, and then you go farther into it and you realize that the Fed it's not a government agency. It's actually owned by the largest banks. The representatives of the Fed are owned by the banks. So they're just going to continue, and they're fine to just freely lend money out because they know that they can always just print more. That's what happened in 2008. That's why we had quantitative easing. Quantitative easing was us freeing up the money supply. So basically, we went into debt, we went bankrupt, we bail out the banks. The banks say, well, what are we gonna do? We'll just print more money. We don't care. We can just print and print. The dollar loses so much value. So for people like you and I that actually like to save money, our dollar just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And if anybody doesn't believe that, just go back 20 years ago and think about what you could buy with $5 and think about that same number today. So the banks don't care. They win either way. Whether that we go bankrupt or not, they're always going to be able to get bailed out. And so I'm very concerned about our economy that's just built on this debt and just built on us freely putting money out there. The stock market right now is really based on companies just getting cheap money, rebuying their own stock, and that's just propping the stock market up. Eventually things will turn. Eventually people will see, hey, companies aren't as strong as we think they are. Things aren't as good as they are, and we'll see a major correction. And so I think people really need to watch these things. We got to be careful that we just don't freely give the banks just free reign on our money. And that's unfortunately, by pulling back some of these regulations, that's what we're doing.
Well, and another thing too with the banks and such, when they have so much control and they've sold so much debt to so many other countries, I guess that kind of keeps the other nations at bay from, if they do sell back their debt, then it's like they have the fear of, okay, are we going to go to war now? So they're like, we better just hang on. We better hang on to this. Yeah. But, another thing that I was hoping we could talk about also is what you've seen in these markets over the past 10 years with the stocks right now. They have done exceptionally well since Trump came in office. I mean, I think they've gone up about 30%, and
about 35% since he's been in office.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unheard of. And then I look at some of these cryptos and they've gone up 35, and they'll move 35% in a week. So it's like, if you know how to move into those cryptos at the right time and get out at the right time, I think it's fascinating. But with somebody that has a 401 or an IRA, a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to move those now into not only gold and silver, but also cryptos. And you guys have a program, like you were kind of a pioneer of that program, weren't you? You and your partner.
We were one of the first companies to get involved in cryptocurrencies within the IRA. So the beauty behind our program, if you think about a self-directed IRA, is you can take control of what you're doing with your money. Even though the stock market's up 35% since Trump got in office, I would be shocked if most people saw a 35% gain from that day to today. I think that when you really look at the math, and you worked at a Fortune 100 company, a lot of times the funds that are in there, the fees are high. They're not getting that kind of return. So I think people, even though the market's up, I don't think they're up that 35%. The beauty behind moving in a product with what we offer, a self-directed IRA, you can do precious metals, you can do cryptos, but really you can move with the market. So if you see things right now, so let's say you move into a self-directed, you buy precious metals, and you just kind of wait it out, and the stock market crashes, you can always get back in there. You can always sell, get back in there. With 401ks, it's not that easy. So I think that a lot of people that that really research this, and they realize, hey, if I can take control of my IRA and put it in a safe haven right now, get away from equities and just kind of wait. Because listen, it's not that I don't think the stock market's a good place to be. I feel like right now it's inflated. It's a bubble. So if you can time it and get into the markets at a better time, I think that's a better way to do it. So our products really just allow the client to be in control of it. We help them get into the cryptos or the metals. We're their broker for that. But really, ultimately, the client is in control of the assets. It's theirs. The gold and silver is theirs. The crypto is theirs. We just facilitate it for them. And I think people like that control. There's so few assets that people own by themselves. I think people don't realize that if you buy a fund, you're just buying a company that owns companies. If you buy an ETF, you're basically just buying a share of something greater. There's so few times that you actually own the own asset in your IRA. And so that's really what we're able to offer to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too that I was thinking about is the housing market. How's my audio? Is my audio okay? I heard the gremlins were getting it earlier.
Yeah, it sounds good.
It sounds good now. Okay, I saw the comment section. There's like, Rex, you got to check your audio. The gremlins are getting you. So the housing market right now is going nuts.
Right.
And as exceptional as the market has done in the stock market, I just see so many similarities from 10 years ago. The stock market was hot 10 years ago. The housing market was hot. People were like, man, we better buy a house because we won't be able to afford it. Those same things are going on right now. Like in places like Salt Lake City. I mean, talk about a beautiful city, but at the same time, if you want to get fried with chemtrail love, that place has the inversion from hell. It's got the Wasatch Mountains around this valley. Love it out there. I grew up out there, but I thought I wanted to move back there, but I went and visited. I saw some days that all you could see is just this haze, pollution, stratospheric aerosol injections, all the love. But you can't even get a house out there right now. People are like literally getting on waiting lists to buy a house. And they're making offers that are way over what they're even asking for the houses. That's the kind of stuff that went on in Vegas. Yeah. And I remember Vegas, I have friends that bought a house in Vegas. They paid $400 for it. They thought they were getting a good deal. That house went up to $800. They waited when the market was hot. It went up to $800. They waited for the market to cool off. It was at $400. They bought it. They had to get out of it. They had to file bankruptcy. I think it was worth a little over $200,000 when they got out of it in Vegas. And a lot of times people's assets is in their house. Like, oh yeah, I got $1 million house. Okay, that's awesome. Right on. Your mortgage is, X amount, whatever. But really, I mean, I just think that we're going through some exciting times, man. It's exciting. Are you ready? Are you ready? It's like the digital renaissance. Where are you going to be? Which side of the fence are you going to be on? I mean, you could be with it, or hey, you can be against it. I get it. Or you can just kind of watch on the sidelines. And I know a lot of people that watch on the sidelines, and by the time they're ready to get in, it's too late.
Yeah, and I think it's something about bubbles and bull markets and real estate and stock market where people sometimes it just takes them a while to get revved up, and then they jump in. Like jumping in now and buying, like you mentioned, in Salt Lake City. I have a friend that actually lives there, sells real estate, and he is so busy, multiple offers on every property. Properties have doubled, tripled in value. And I unfortunately, unless you're a flipper, unless you're flipping houses, or unless you're going to sell that house and move to Guam, how does it help you that your house doubles in value? Unless, down the road, you're going to move somewhere much less expensive. I really think the only benefit of your home is you're locking in your rent in a way by getting a mortgage. And you lock it and you kind of make it flat for, 30 years. It's very few people are able to use it as an asset because they're not going to leave. Most people aren't going to sell their home and move to Belize or wherever they would go. So that asset that you think you have, there's not much of an asset. It's not a vehicle that you can make a lot of money because you got to live somewhere. So I think that it feels good when your home goes up in value, but then you got to say to yourself, well, where do I go? I like it here. I'm not going to move out of this house that I like. So you're just locking in a mortgage, which is good. But I think right now, with unemployment at the lowest point we've seen in many years, if we see unemployment start to move and we see prices and interest rates start to go up, because there's going to be a trigger effect. If you see interest rates on homes go to 5.5%, 6%, things are going to slow down. The economy is slowing down. And guess what's going to happen? People are going to stop spending. Our economy is based on spending. When people stop spending, interest rates go up, that's when we're going to see the correction. And I guarantee it, we're going to start to see it in Christmas time this year. Those Christmas sales that everybody loves, the retailers talk about, I guarantee we're going to see a slowdown here, unfortunately. And that's when people got to look around and say, okay, be conservative, don't overextend, don't buy a boat, don't buy a drone or whatever I don't know what you're going to buy, but you know what I'm saying? Just be cautious. So I think that sort of the writing's on the wall and people got to be careful right now.
Well, and then on that note, you've put together several books that are actually you're giving out for Leak Project listeners right now, as far as inflation and how that's kind of used to keep people in the rat race. So I'm going to leave those links in the video description box. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to click those links. You put together several books. I think they're fascinating, and brochures as well, and pamphlets and information. So give us a few keys that you would recommend people look for. And, okay, there's a trigger. Yep, there's another one. And I'm thinking of the Deutsche Bank. They're in big trouble right now, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I think all the banks are going to be in trouble. Frankly, I don't think there's going to be one bank. I think a lot of the banks are in trouble. That's why you've seen so many of these scandals come out. Wells Fargo has been getting in a lot of trouble recently just for, opening up fake accounts, pushing clients into certain accounts, in-house funds. The banks are going to be in trouble here in the near future. So I think ultimately what we talk about is just getting educated. Anyone that wants our free guides, we have so many, I don't even know how many, we probably have 10 free guides, gold and silver, inflation, Bitcoin. We have an Ethereum guide. I don't even know if we talked about it. If someone's looking into Ethereum for their IRA, we have a guide for that. So I would say give us a call. All the guides are anywhere from 5 to 8 pages. So they're short. They're packed with good information, facts, charts. We've really kind of streamlined it for the average person, someone that's not just looking at economics every day, and broken down things like, inflation is not 2%. It's actually between 7 and 10%, things like that. And we show that in the numbers. I mean, we've had economists go through and look at the numbers and say, our inflation is much higher than what the government reports. And so all of these guys will explain it. So I would say just have people give us a call, get educated. Right now is a good time. We got a long weekend. If they call us today, we can get the guides out, or if they call anytime over the weekend, or if they just, fill out the link, they'll get the guide immediately, and then they can start reviewing it and call back next week if they have any pertinent questions.
Ethereum's like priced pretty sharp right now compared to where it's been. I think it's at I mean, if for me, I just made a position in Ethereum. So I think that that's looking pretty good in my opinion. So this is great, man. And so this Christmas though, if you see people kind of, if you're looking at the numbers, watch the numbers, and we're seeing these sales down, we're seeing the numbers down for retail sales around Christmas time. You think that would be like that's a big sign, big precursor sign to possibly another correction?
Yeah, I think so, because you look at, obviously the economy is built on us spending money and people continuing to buy things. You look at the big retailers, a lot of them are the big job creators too. So if they continue to see slow months, they're going to have to let people off because obviously they can't continue to pay them. So it's that trigger effect, that we see coming down the pipe. And I do think we're going to see that pullback happen. I think it's going to start to slow down more and more. People are going to see interest rates going up. They're going to start to get more cautious. With interest rates going up, that means their credit card bills are going up too. So, those payments are going to be going up. A lot of things get affected by these interest rates going up. And that's if nothing dramatic happens. If we see anything happen with North Korea, and there's some pretty heavy talk. I mean, Vice President Pence said, basically that there needs to be some kind of resolution here. Otherwise, President Trump is going to do something. And so they're not talking about just, we're going to let them see what happens. We're going to negotiate over a while. I think President Trump is fed up what's happening there. We could be in some kind of war with North Korea, or maybe obviously we've been doing sanctions. If we see any kind of dramatic event like that, that'll move things much quicker because people will just get out of equities and they'll move into commodities. But even if those things don't happen, I think this December is going to be pretty slow.
Okay. And one more question before we close out. You have a YouTube channel now, and I just don't remember the name of the channel.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that. It's noblegoldinvestments.com. We posting a lot of good information about, things we talk about here, things we see in the news. They're all short 2-3 minute videos. So no one's going to get, bombarded with too much, but yeah, anyone subscribes, I think you'll find a lot of good data. My partner, Charles, and I both go on that channel. We have conversations on there, quick news stories. So, excited. It took us a while to get up and running, but it's finally up and running here.
Fantastic. Well, Colin, it was great to speak with you. Thank you for spending your time with us. I know you're extremely busy, and looking forward to next time. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you coming on the program, watching the show live. I'd like to thank the moderators for keeping an eye on the chat there. It looks like it was very exciting. I mean, you got to come to the shows just to look at the chat, folks. That's sometimes half the fun. And then you get some great advice from the man, the legend, the way of life, Mr. Colin Plume, literally one of the top brokers in the U.S. So, and also just a really cool guy. So, and one thing I like about Colin is he is very appreciative of freedom and liberty, and that's awesome. I mean, what else could you ask for? Freedom, liberty, treat others with respect, treat others the way that you want to be treated. Somebody made a really cool comment the other day. If you have kids, treat others the way you want people to treat your kids.
Absolutely.
Be good to people, be nice. And this is great. Thank you so much, Colin. Looking forward to next time.
All right. Talk to you soon.
I knelt to pray today.